different organizations. How do you engage youth? I'll start with YB Tony. You know, he's known for being able to get young, you know, politicians to join DAP, his party. You know, the number of the ministers are actually known to be his protege. So how do you actually, YB?
It's not easy.
Not easy, that we all know. That's why we're here.
It's not easy. Not just young, old folks as well. But I think the most important thing that I tell young people, and I'm usually very, very honest about this, unlike many of my colleagues, both my party and outside, a lot of people, when they approach young people, is join, participate. I tend not to want to take that angle. I do think that there's a life out there other than politics. And I do think that there's a lot of experience out there that contributes towards becoming a better politician, regardless of whether you ultimately decide to take the dip into joining politics. So my approach to talking to young people has never been, you must join. I never do that. I hardly ever do that. I mean, for those who have been overseas, I don't know if there's any of you here studying in London or in Melbourne. I do regular trips talking to young people. It has never been join DAP, join Pakatan Harapan, join politics. It has always been be aware about what's happening because politics matter. Be aware that if you don't care about politics, then you have to complain what you get, you know. Be aware that if only the stupid people join politics, then you get stupid ministers. Simple as that. So, if you don't have smart people join politics, you won't get smart ministers. So it's simple as that. Rubbish in, rubbish out. It has always been when young people ask whether they should join immediately, be active in politics, they are very keen. In fact, I do the reverse. I tell them, don't join. I mean, join if you like, but you don't need to be active or full-time in politics, carrying some politician's handbag or bag from the start, right after graduation, because you will not pick up skills outside which will be useful if you are interested in politics over the longer term. But over conversations and stuff, interest grows, and I think certain degree of the genuine interest among the younger people, some will filter through and ultimately join politics. I'll give you a very simple example. Michelle, Adun for Subang Jaya, Michelle Ng, she was my second batch of interns in my office. Back in 2010, she joined, and in fact, I hardly met with her for the next 7-8 years. She was in UK studying her law degree in LSE. She came back, became a lawyer. There were occasional exchange of messages. I believe in letting young people grow, bloom, learn, until such a point where they start getting a little bit frustrated in the corporate world, and but they've seen somewhat the world out there. Then only perhaps you do the fish and so you need to be patient with the fishing rod. Then you get a gem that you can fully use and showcase in the party or in politics. Yeah. So that's just a little insight onto me dealing with young people. I don't like telling them to join politics immediately because you end up with all the buzzwords, big words, without actually knowing anything about what truly makes the world tick out there.
Thank you, Tony. So the soft approach will be the best for you. Ambiga, now you know you've been involved in many NGOs. Bersih, the most well-known one, Bersih 2.0, Hakam, and you work with a lot of young people. Yeah. Now, what's your prognosis? How do you get them to be interested in issues? social issues in particular?
Well, I think you have to make them a part of the conversation, our conversation. Tony talked about politics. Even if you don't join politics, the youth should participate in what's going on in this country. And the best way actually is to vote. And just some figures. There were 1.67 million new voters registered between 2013 and 2018. Many of these were young voters, which is a good thing. But there are still many out there who haven't even registered to vote. And I think we have to have a conversation with the youth about how important it is to be part of the system, to at least value your right to vote. And I think we will get the youth more interested now, because they have seen that you can make a difference. The youth need to know they can make a difference. We have shown that we can make a difference through the ballot box. Now, the other thing is, we have to be nice to the youth. When they demonstrate and peacefully, we shouldn't be arresting them. That's the wrong thing to do, wrong message to send. Because when they do that, I mean, that's happened recently in the new government, and that was quite disappointing. But when you do that, you alienate. And we have to stop alienating the youth. I think we need to show them that there is a space for them in nation building. Sorry, there is a space for them in nation building. We have to, and I think we need to really push this point in our education system. And that, for me, is quite key, which is you are entitled to have your views no matter how old you are. Everyone's views matter as much as the next. And I think that is something our education system has to change, universities have to change, and people must be prepared to challenge premises. So you should challenge even what I'm saying. You shouldn't accept it just because it's coming from me or just because it's coming from anyone. Challenge everything, or at least think about it before you accept what is said to you. So for me, because of elections and so on, I would say that that is key to being part of the nation building process. It doesn't stop there with the vote. It carries on after that.
Thank you, Ambiga. Fadiah is someone who has experienced quite a bit of harassment because of her activism. How do you actually got involved in social issues, and how do you deal with the kind of harassment, and how do you convince young people out there that look that it is worth that despite all the problems that you're facing, that it's still worth doing it?
Okay, I remember when I was reading law, that was in 2001 to 2006. I was not exposed at all to activism. At that time, student activism was non-existent. So I just went to class, I joined the mooting club, I just, I was told that, I should study, graduate, and then become a lawyer and make a lot of money. That was about it. And then when I was doing my pupillage before I got admitted to the bar, I was doing it in my hometown. I remember a bunch of people from the Kuala Lumpur Legal Aid Center came to Alostar to conduct a training on refugee rights. So they partnered with the UNHCR, the UN agency that deals with refugee rights. And also there was another training on human rights. I remember Edmund Bond was there, Shanmuga was there, and they started talking about human rights, why it's important for us to protect, to promote, to uphold human rights. For me, I was really excited to learn about these new things that were not taught in law school. And I got really interested to learn more about activism in Kuala Lumpur. And then at that time, I told my mom, you know what, Mom, I'm just going to complete my pupillage. I'm going to move to Kuala Lumpur because I want to be involved in activism. And then I joined the march led by Ambiga in 2007. It was raining, we were chanting. It felt so empowering. And for me, as a young woman at that time, when I saw Ambiga, a woman leading such a big protest, you know, it taught me a lot of things. It taught me that we have a responsibility to speak truth to power. When we demonstrated, when we protested, there are a lot of people who said nasty things about us. They demonized you. They said, why don't you use the right channels? But they forget that the protest was basically trying to highlight such injustice that must be addressed immediately. And it is a legitimate form of expression. So that was how I started getting involved in activism. And then I started volunteering my time with this Gerakan Mansuhkan ISA. ISA was abolished in 2012. I remember going to Kamunting to visit detainees who got arrested without trial, who got detained without trial, who got tortured. And I started questioning a lot of things about power, why we as people have to collectively be together to question and also dismantle systems that allow oppression, that allow injustice. Even though, you know, like people say that, oh, you have to be part of a political party to make change possible. Yes, you can do that if you want to, but democracy is wider than that. I think this is not something that we used to talk about, right? About what does it mean when we talk about democracy? When we change on May 9th, what does it mean to us? What does it mean to marginalized groups that continue to be demonized until today? You know, you see politicians saying bad things about the minorities, about the marginalized groups, the oppressed groups. Who are, you know, who's going to speak about all these issues if the youth are not going to take that responsibility? So I think we also have to understand that we live in a world that is unequal. That is the reality of the world we live in, the country that we live in. The world or this country reeks of racism. They have, you know, you see how the state uses religion, uses race to divide us, to make us forget things that matter to build this country together. So I think for youth, it's very important for you to have political education. We're not going to get it in school because that's the system that we have now. It has been designed that way, and it's not going to change anytime soon. But we have to find a way to educate ourselves. And then empowerment. So political education is theory. So you have to understand theory. Why? Because we have to understand the world we live in. So we read philosophers that write about the world, that write about systems, that write about power. And then we also have to read about the history of social movements. We don't have to go to the US, we don't have to go to South Africa, but we can learn from them. We also have our own history in Malaysia. Like the quite recent history is Bersih 2.0. I remember being tear-gassed, chased by the police. You know, you see people getting beaten up, black and blue. People were bleeding when they got detained. They were denied legal representation. We had to wait outside the detention center for hours, from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. There were old people, there were children. And this is our struggle, and this is our history, and we have to own it. But it does not mean that it stops here. So we have to continue doing it. We have to continue being critical. I think that is very important. And I think to be critical is a challenge because not many people would like you. When you stand for something that is unpopular, not many people would like you. You will get a lot of hate mail. I get death threats. I get rape threats for talking about history that has been erased from our collective memory, from our textbook. But we have to do it because that's our responsibility as human beings.
Thank you, Fadiah. It's amazing that sometimes, you know, you meet individuals or sometimes you attend events that, you know, it changes your perspective completely. Hopefully today will change some of your perspective, you know. So I think suddenly you realize that this is your calling, more or less. I still remember when I was, I did architecture, but I decided to drop it. But I decided to do economics instead. And I went to my first class. Economics 101, and about 30 of us were waiting for the lecturer to come in. He walked in and he said, look, if you have all come to study economics because you believe that you want to learn, about economics because you want to be rich, one day, then you come to the wrong class. But if you have come because you want to find out why people are poor, please stay. And I knew I found my calling. So I think, it's amazing. Now, Masni, now you set up this organization, you want to work with the youth and all that, you want to, get them to be involved. Why do you want to do that, and how do you, somehow, decided that this is your calling?
Okay, first, maybe I would like to correct. The MCCHR was co-founded by Edmund Bond. Before MCCHR, I worked with the Bar Council in 2006. And as you know, in 2007, Dato Ambiga did the Walk for Justice, right? So as part of the Bar Council Secretariat, I helped organize, and also I participated in that walk. So prior to that, I was a science student. I don't care much about things that's happening in the country. And it's like you are sleeping with eyes open. You don't know what's going on around you. So when I joined Bar Council, actually it opened up my eyes about a lot of things that is not right, right? And that makes me want to learn law. So I took up a law degree part-time while I was in the Bar Council. And after that, I joined MCCHR because there's a calling here in MCCHR to actually run this Undi Malaysia program, which is a youth program. And just now, I remember Stephen Sim said that, people said that youth have no experience. I can tell you it's totally wrong because I've worked with youth for 5 years. And what I notice about them, and I'm in awe with all these young people, is that they are a bunch of knowledgeable people. They are very resourceful. What they need is just a platform and a listening ear and a tool to help them reach their full potential. Well, that's a big word. But that's what they need, If you say they are inexperienced, it's because you are inexperienced. Because as an older generation, your experience and their experience are not the same. They are living in a generation that's different from ours. Globalization has made the world to become smaller. Internet has made it easier for you to get information. It's all at your fingertips. So that's why when we want to find out about things, we read books, we go to the library, physical, right? For that, you can subscribe to Law Journal or something if you want to find out about law from other countries. So it becomes a lot more easier for them and faster. And that's why you always say, you always tell them, you all cannot wait. Because that's the current situation. Things are become faster. So what we need to do is to build that gap, right? And listen to them. If they want, and then, get them to vote every 5 years, but in between, what are they supposed to do? So we have this program where we actually encourage them to do activism, yes, but the core of that activism modules is basically to invite them to look at their problem from different perspectives. Because most of the time when you look at problem, you actually try to solve the symptom rather than the root cause of the problem. So if you solve the symptom, you'll have the same thing again and again. But if you go and sit down and find out what is the real problem, what is the root cause of that problem, then you solve that one. And Yeah, you get your problem solved lah, basically. Yeah, I mean, while working with these young people, I eventually have hope for the nation. You know, nation building is not hard if we, you know, bridge that gap, if we work together. And I can thank Bar Council for that lah. That ignite me all this interest.
Thank you, Mazna. Now, you know, the new government has, I think, you know, made a number of missteps, despite the fact that, you know, they say that this is the new regime. You know, things have changed. I think the rest of the students, when they protested in Putrajaya relating to the education minister, Masli, to protest his acceptance as the president of the University of Islamic Malaysia. And, you know, a lot of people, and especially the youth, could see that this is very much a conflict of interest there for an education minister to take up, you know, a top post in a university, which he is actually in charge of. So I think, and of course, besides that, you got also the recent events in Sabah, where 8 activists were arrested for protesting during Malaysia Day, September 16. And you have the Deputy Home Minister, Aziz Zaman, who say that, look, you know, they should not protest. This is, you know, this is new Malaysia. Youth shouldn't take to the streets. They should write to the government, and we can have a round table and all that. Now, you know, I would like to ask the panel, you know, whoever wants to answer that, or, you know, perhaps all of you would want to say something. Now, you know, should the youth today take to the streets, or should they, you know, do something else, you know, as what the Home Minister, Deputy Home Minister say? What do you say to that? Anybody? Ambiga, yeah, please.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, of course, they have the right to go to the streets. They have the right under the federal constitution. It's something that has been promised to us. I think, and I've said this before, some people haven't got the memo, right, that this is a new. Some people are still operating on the old platform. And I think it is important that they, well, and I think they need to be educated as well. So as far as I'm concerned, you can do both. You can go to the streets, and I think it was correct of them to have protested the way they did. I don't think there was anything wrong in what they did. But I mean, you can also engage, yes. But you know, sometimes street protests are important because it is visual, all right, and it shows people that the citizens are unhappy. If you have it behind closed doors, of course, many people in power would prefer that, because then you can hide away and you can talk about it and either do something or not do something. But when there is a street protest, and that is key in a street protest, you then show the government.
We cannot hear you, Brett. Maybe we should change the microphone.
I think that's the receiver.
Charge that you're serious.
Oh.
You then show that you are serious about the points that you made. So I would absolutely encourage that. That's our right.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Tony?
Very simply, anyone has the right to say what they want, and anyone has the right to protest the way they want to protest. That's a separate issue from whether it is effective or not effective. So a person should not be stopped from protesting the way they want to protest, but depending on the issues involved, depending on the parties you're dealing with, perhaps whoever who is thinking about trying to find a settlement or resolution to an issue needs to think from the angle of which approach will get the best result. In a government that refuses to listen, die won't listen, stupid minister, won't even listen or talk to me, or protest all you want. Now, in the event, you got very nice Tony Phua, always listening. You know? And then before I know of the issue, I see huge protests. Why? It's all about approach. So in my view, nobody should be stopped from protesting. But protesting the way you want to protest, whether in a street demonstration, peaceful street demonstration, or a small picket arrangement, or memo submission to the minister, always think of what do you want to achieve, what is the best way to achieve the outcome you want to deliver.
So, yeah, I think social protests are very important because you are also trying to educate the masses about the issue at hand. If we look at history, for example, you know, when Martin Luther King Jr. protested and marched, and then the black community got the right to vote. We women got the right to vote because some women back then, you know, protested for us, and some died to give us what we have today. And I think we have to understand, you know, the importance of social protest, and we cannot demonize anyone who is trying to use that as a form of activism, as a form of trying to educate the masses, and also as a form, you know, of expression. So I think in the case where the two students got arrested for staging a sit-in, I was quite privy to what happened because I was there that night, and I went to the police station. We waited for 8 hours for them to get released. They tried so many times to fix an appointment with Dr. Mazna. And at the last minute, he said, oh, I'm going to Hajj. And he cancelled it. And a lot of student groups went to see him, and they submitted their memorandum to say that you have to abolish our coup, you have to take steps to ensure that university autonomy, that academic freedom is upheld as soon as possible. Many groups have done that. But he then established this committee to review our coup without including the students. This is an affront to university autonomy. This is an affront to academic freedom. And then the student decided to protest by staging a sit-in. But nobody knew about all these facts because we are so quick to judge, we are so quick to say something without trying to understand, without trying to read, without trying to like educate ourselves about the issues. So I think that has to change. That culture has to change.
Okay, Mazna, you got
I think they all have said it, and I totally agree with all of them.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Before I open to the floor, I still got one, I think, very important question that I would like to ask. You know, the voting age has been hopefully will be lowered to 18, and I think, you know, a lot of us would welcome that because we believe that young people, by the age of 18, you should be involved in decision making, should be involved in making a choice in regard to who the leaders of this country should be. However, at the same time, it is quite worrying in a way that, you know, when you are 18, you're looking at, you know, even high school students. Are they equipped? Are they ready? Are they, you know, with the fact that, you know, for all these years we've been told, or students have been told, do not be involved in politics, and laws were, you know, implemented, were you know, written and were actually passed to stop, you know, students from thinking critically, you know, from being, you know, from doing things differently, from questioning, from asking issues, you know. So I think, you know, are they ready? Are they, you know, how are you going to change the education system to prepare them, you know, to this, you know, for this, this onerous task, responsibility in actually making, are they ready to make an informed choice? So any panelists would want to...
I think
you go with, okay, Tony, go ahead.
The concern is valid. There's no question that concern is valid. The concern is valid for a very simple reason that there's no attempts to grant awareness to people who are 21 and below, for the simple reason being that, well, since they are not able to vote yet, why bother them with all this information? Why bother them with campus discussion? Why bother them with campaigns targeting the 18 years old? When I do my Facebook advertising for the election campaign, I make sure my target group 21 years and above. So if you are less than that, you won't see my advertisements. So you don't see the advertisements, you don't get the messages from the political parties. But if the age is lowered, then obviously you become a target market. Obviously both sides of the fence will then try to pitch their messages to you, and that's where the education process starts. So it has to start first by lowering the age, then the education process, then the laws that allows, for example, for campus to, for politics to be discussed within the campus, for the students, for the young people to better understand and get greater awareness of politics in the country. And to me, there's no reason why 18-year-olds cannot understand politics. Goodness, they are being taught complicated maths equations like differentiation, physics theories that are so completely abstract to our real life. You cannot understand what makes a good leader and what doesn't make a good leader. That's completely condescending. And my view is you have the complete abilities to be able to make judgments. You just need to be equipped with the information from both sides so that you get a better understanding of our political issues and landscape.
Thank you, Tony.
I think one of the things that we do is to actually educate about undi, right? And when people vote, you want them to make an informed choice. And recently we did a survey. We found that post GE14, more people are aware about their MPs as opposed to GE13. I think a lot of people are not aware who their MP or their adun. Yeah? So, for them to make an informed decision, they must know their MP. They must know what their MP vision for that area, and so on and so forth. And in the survey, we also asked whether it is easy to reach your MP or not. And most of them said, 50% said, yeah, I can reach my MP. And we asked them this, another question, do you want to engage with your MP? Yes, we do. That will give the MP the chance to actually share their vision. Well, we're talking about MPs, but in future, when the next GE15, the candidate, we want the candidate, I mean, part of what we do is we want the candidate to actually tell their voters what vision they have for the constituency, so that their voters are well informed about who this candidate is, whether this candidate can work for me or not, and so on and so forth. So it's whether 21 or 18, I think 18 is just the right age, right? You just finished school. I think 18 is a good age to vote. What else I want to say? I forgot already. You know, I'll come back later.
Thank you, Mazna. Anybody else? Ambiga, yes, go ahead.
Okay, if I can jump in there. If you can get married at 18, you can join the police at 18.
Oh, yeah.
I think even the army at 18, you can certainly vote at 18. I don't think there's a problem with that. But what I will say is this. Our education system, and I'm moving a little bit because this actually is a problem I feel that has to be tackled. We have a system that does not encourage thinking. that does not encourage criticism, that does not encourage discussion, that does not encourage students to have their own opinions. I'm not talking about university, I'm talking about as you come up through the school years. We also have a very feudalistic mindset. We have a mindset that says, whatever the older people says must be right and we follow. No, that isn't the way the world is moving, actually. And as Mazna, you said, that the youth today are very engaged. They actually probably know more factually than many of us do. And yet we restrict them from expressing those views. So for me, the whole system of education has to change as well, so that our youth become more mature, become more thinking population, more questioning population. And for me, actually, our whole education policy, let's take the politicians out of education policy. The problem, half the problem with the education system is that there's too much politics in it. And let's leave it to the educationists, the real teachers, and there are many out there, the people who really understand what education is about. So for me, it's a several-pronged approach to changing of mindset. I'm saying that because 18-year-olds are eminently capable of making up their minds as to who their leaders should be. All I will say is this, as a statistic, nearly 3 million people had not even registered to vote at the last elections, which means many of them are youth as well, who couldn't be bothered to go and register, which means that it's not their fault. They are disengaged from politics. They are disengaged from government. And the reason for that is they really feel they can't be bothered. Or many of them are disgusted. Many of them just don't want to get into the fray. If you recall the period leading up to the 14th general elections, the kind of conversations that were in the press, I mean, I am ashamed. I don't want to read the press. I actually don't want our children to even read some of what the politicians were saying at that time. So, yeah, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing and really you feel shy. I mean, honestly, we would like leaders where children parents can say to the children, oh, you must watch X speaking, look at how well he speaks. Before the elections, we had politicians, you have to switch off the TV because you don't want your children to hear what they're saying. Because it's so embarrassing, it's a very low level way of arguing a point, and it was very toxic. But I think now we have a chance to change all of that. So it isn't just about an 18-year-old voting, it is about the whole of our society maturing to a dignified level. That's what I look for. And the youth understand that. Huh? The youth appreciate that. That's why they have disengaged from the process. We need to get them engaged again. And we do that by setting good examples. We do that by telling them that their opinion counts and that every human being, whatever community you're from, and don't forget, when you talk about youth, you have marginalized youth committees, marginalized youth as well. The Orang Asli, all these communities that people spew hatred and nonsense about in the press. I'm horrified that we have leaders who do that. And I think, seriously, we also need to think about youth in marginalized communities. And I think that is something that we will get to. We have a real chance now. And I think now you hear our ministers talking some sense. It's really good to hear, okay? Maybe not all, but most of them, right? Don't you, can you see a difference? You can see a difference. Don't you feel like reading what they say? I do. I feel like hearing them. I like to put on the TV and hear what they have to say. That is the level we have come to. So 18 is fantastic. And I think it's time that our youth also were brought into the picture. Youth, by the way, definition is 15 to 24, as I understand it. So even from 15 onwards, you should already be interested in what's going on in the country.
Thank you, Ambiga. Fadiah, you want to say something? Okay, thank you. Okay, Thank you very much. And the floor is yours, really. I think, do you have any questions that you want to ask? You have any comments that you want to make? By all means. Now, I got the first question here. Not a very young person. Unfortunately.
93.
Please, say who you are and where you're from and all that before you ask your questions or make your comments.
Thank you, Stephen Gan. My name is M. Krishnamurthy. I used to be a journalist with the Star, Straits Times. Now I freelance for Malaysiakini. And I'm a full-time professor, that's why I'm 93, at Xiamen University. My question is related to some of the subjects you all discussed. And I love this government, this new government. And that's why I wrote this after failing 5 times writing a book, the bestseller now. And that's why I wrote this book. But I must say I'm a little disappointed, because there were many issues this government did not handle very well, especially the media strategies. Like the child marriage was badly handled, was very badly handled media strategies-wise. And people's opinion really went down. Even a minister was found not guilty. It was very badly handled by the AG's office. AG saying he's no knowledge about it, and then saying that 9:30 was informed. These are things, things that the old government did. We don't want to hear this kind of things. And many other issues. Formerly, the old government, we couldn't, get them, some of them. But now, the new government, the journalists can't get them. They don't even answer. You send them 3 emails, they don't answer. Ministers and special officers. It's sad to say. So my question now is related to this. How do you think, you all spoke widely about, even the thing of the education minister you all spoke about, heading president of II Islamic University. Now, how do you think media strategy-wise or opinions to get a good, coming out smelling like a sweet rose, sweet-smelling rose? How do you think the government should have handled that? One, the education minister, prime minister, and the government at large. How do you, the students have the right to protest. I agree with you all. And how do you think that should have been resolved? One, after a lot of review, the prime minister comes out and says, maybe we have taken the students' points into consideration. We will not appoint him. We will look for somebody else, or something like that. So issues like this, I don't know if this government wants to continue smelling good like a rose, and people voted you all, the people changed you all. After 61 years, we are relieved. We're happy you have this Pakatan Harapan. That's what all this book is all about.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right. So we want to know what your views are. Making the government look good in the public side. I've raised many issues which didn't look good.
Thank you. Now, it's an interesting question. It's a good question. The issue is still ongoing. Well, before we answer that question, there's another question also by a not so young person, I can see. Where are all the young people? Anyway, please go ahead. Yes.
My name is Rajendra. I come from the same constituency with YB Tony.
Can you speak closer to the microphone, please?
I come from the same constituency where YB Tony is. We have worked together for a long time. I agree with Dato Ambiga that especially the pattern of behavior of a lot of our politicians, the most important thing is the one that is in parliament. The young people find it very destructive, and they think that the parliament, the first thing that should be there come some reforms in the parliamentarians themselves who are debating. There should be some sort of standard, intelligent debate rather than talking. I know some like people like Tony Poa can tell us what sort of things should come changes in that. Secondly, the normal thinking of quite a lot of young people is to join politics, you don't have to have any have any qualification, no education, nothing, but it's only a vehicle to become rich. It is not really to really serve people, but politics is something that sort of vocation which they can quickly become very rich. This is something that I would like to. The other thing is about I don't know, it may be a wrong notion, that politics is only for the lawyers. You must be very articulate, you must be able to debate very well. And I see even parliament, majority of them are lawyers. It's very few economics or things like that. Maybe you can enlighten us on that.
Thank you very much. One more, yeah. Please.
Oh, I'm Wong, retired, so not so young either. I want to take up issue with the voting age 18. If they're going to vote at 18, shouldn't we be talking to those who are 13 now? Because it takes 5 years to the next election. So point number one, talk to the 13-year-olds. Second is, how do you bring up this topic? How do you engage 13-year-old?
Okay, fine. So those are the interesting questions. What about panelists? Anyone would like to jump in? Tony, okay, please.
Politicians can always talk any topic. We love hearing our own voices. MPs, Parliament, quality of debate, there's no question about it, although I would blame that impression also a little bit on the media. They only like that sort of debate because it captures headlines. The boring ones that you hear the bulk of the time when you fall asleep, when you talk about numbers and economics and stuff, no, that doesn't get captured onto the headlines or onto the report. So you sit in the parliament for often more than 8-9 hours a day. There's lots of discussions and debates going on, some mundane, some very, what do you call it, filled with, what do you call it, facts and figures, some, of course, controversial. Unfortunately, it's only the more controversial stuff that tends to capture headlines, that tends to make viral videos, and hence, obviously, a more skewed impression of the parliament. That is not at all to say that the quality of the parliamentary debate needs to improve, but to improve the quality of parliamentary debates, we first need better MPs. And to have better MPs, we need smarter people taking part in politics and elections.
Not just lawyers.
Not just lawyers. You cannot escape from it. And number two, I don't think the parliament is filled with lawyers. I think lawyers are a minority in parliament, although they may make the most noise. No, they don't form a majority or anywhere near a majority of parliamentary candidates. I'm not a lawyer, although many people think I am. And certainly there are policies and reforms that we're trying to put in place to make the parliament more relevant. There's ongoing discussions on select committees on various issues to monitor, discuss, and check on the policies taken by the relevant ministries. So one of the things I've discovered over the past 10 years is the parliament, while you have elected MPs, decisions in the parliament are effectively rubber stamps. They are really just rubber stamps. The only reason why you want to be in parliament is so that you can have your voice heard, not in the parliament, but outside. In the parliament, it's pointless because it doesn't change any decision or outcome within the parliament. So we are trying to change that. In foreign countries, democracies have moved on to select committees, to permanent committees on budget, on defense, on procurement, etc. And this gives a degree of independence and assertiveness to parliament as a check to the executive. And these are reforms that we are pursuing, and I'm sure you'll see more of it coming over the next 6 to 12 months.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody else?
Yeah,
okay, fine.
Maybe
Fadiah.
a little bit about, I think when I talk about democracy just now, right? What does it mean to have genuine democracy? It means that all power, all sovereignty emanates from the people. That means everyone has the right to be involved in politics, including children, a 13-year-old, an 18-year-old. Everyone has a right. So we have to stop talking to the youth in a patronizing way. You know, they should be part of this discussion. They should be heard, and we should listen to what they have to say. I think that culture has to be cultivated. And also, when we talk about child marriage, it makes me really angry when the DPM said that she's powerless, that the government is powerless, they cannot do anything. Why does that happen? You know, when you are in power, you have all the avenues that you can use to protect the most marginalized, the most oppressed among us. So that means, in this case, that democracy is not for the powerless. It's not for this child who needs our protection. So what do we do when the government says that, oh, we can't do anything about it? So we, the people, have to collectively resist whatever that is being given to us. We have to speak up. We have to demand so that we can protect each other. So I think I believe in collective power of people trying to reclaim democracy, trying to reclaim our own freedom. Because if you look at history, throughout history, not just here in Malaysia, throughout the world, freedom is never given to you. You have to fight for it. That means it's going to be a struggle, but we have to do it collectively in order to make it possible.
Thank you, Fadiah. Anybody else?
Yes,
okay,
excuse
Ambiga.
me. Just to answer that question about the voting age of 18, I think together with that, we may have to look at automatic registration, because then you get everyone on the rolls. That's just a practical point. But Fadiah is right. I think the education of the youth can start much younger. And maybe what we need to do is to look at local council elections. Look at something that is smaller, you know. Get children involved, even in school. I mean, in schools have debating teams. They have all sorts of things. So the topics can be about good governance. Good governance is something we should inculcate in children anyway. Anti-corruption measures is something we should inculcate in young children anyway. So there is nothing there is no mystery about politics in that sense, so that you feel that the youngsters can't understand. So my own view is that there is no problem in getting children involved in the conversation about good governance. And Mr. Krish, I appreciate what you said, because, and also what you said, Fadiah, which is no one in power can say they're powerless, really. I mean, that is a contradiction in terms. Of course you have power. You are the government. And the government must take the lead in certain basic human rights issues. It is the government that sets the tone. And sometimes laws have to be passed. For example, hate speech, anti-hate speech laws. Now, is that something we need in the country? If the situation is bad, then the government will look to legislation, and the government will pass legislation to that effect. So the government sometimes has to take the lead in some of these social issues, okay? For example, when the drug problem was really bad in those days, they brought in, and I'm against it, the death penalty, okay? But they were addressing a specific social problem. That's what governments do. Not everybody may appreciate what the background was, but there was a reason for that then. So in other words, if there is a social issue, and come on, if child marriage is not a social issue, I don't know what is. If we cannot resolve child marriage, then we have failed, completely failed. We're failing our children. And that is where the government then must come and take the lead. So, but you know what? I mean, there are hiccups. I'm not saying no, Krish, but there are also good things that have happened, which I'm appreciative of. Things like getting rid of BTN, for example. Getting serious about corruption. That to me is absolutely key, and they are getting serious about corruption. So, but that's why we need to speak up. When it is about child marriage, when it is about marginalized communities who cannot speak for themselves, we have an absolute duty to speak up. We have no choice. And it's fine, because we have to assume that this government is different from the last. And I think we can assume that quite correctly. That we will not get jailed or thrown into jail for speaking our piece about child marriage. You may get criticism, but that's par for the course. So I think that nation building is about all of us, okay? And as I say, we cannot leave anyone out when we talk about nation building. And I think, frankly, we need to give the youth credit, because honestly, in many areas, they probably know more than we do.
Thank you, Ambiga.
Okay. I just want to talk about the 13 years old. I think we should include human rights education, democracy, that kind of thing in school. I remember I went to one international school, and this 10 years old actually organized a human rights day in their school. I wonder, why don't we have it in our public school? We can teach UDHR if you want. There's a module for children, there's a children version, right? So you can include that. You can include about democracy, about right to vote and stuff, of course, at that level. So yeah, I'm all for having human rights education in school.
Thank you. More questions? Yes. Yeah. Oh, over there. Okay, fine. Please introduce yourself and where you're from.
Hi, fellow panelists and everyone attended this session. Okay, my name is Teo. Yeah, and I'm currently a university student in University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. Yeah, and I have a question for fellow panelists, is that speaking about lowering the age of voting rights, right? So for the past decades, our education system has been always study to graduate and memorize to score. Yes. Okay, the youth did not realize that actually they are the key factor in contributing to nation building. Yeah, especially in schools of rural areas, like other not so developed states. Yeah, and for me, I'm personally only involved in knowing the concept of leadership and responsibility as a youth after I joined university. Yeah, so how about those that are not privileged enough to join the universities? They don't realize how this leadership works and how does youth actually voice out. Yeah, so there's no path or channel that can provide knowledge to prepare them for this game-changing decision in every 5 years. So if let's say it's lower to 18 years old, but they are not exposed to taking the accountability that they can actually change the future. Yeah. So do you suggest to develop leadership courses in high schools especially? Yeah, not just in cities, but in rural areas? If yes, how can you prevent these leadership courses to be linked with politics or propaganda and again become the restrictions for youth to voice out in the long term? Yeah. So these are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a few more questions. Please.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning to the panelists and also to the moderator. My name is Yen Ke, and also one of the current students in inside UM, and also one of the student activism for the UM group, okay, UMANI and also Suara Siswa. So there's one statement I want to give and also 3 questions to the panelists. So one of it is like what Ms. Fadiah said just now. Actually, we have already sent a lot of memorandum and also trying to make the appointment with Dr. Masdi. But seems like it's very hard to get with him until the arrestment of the student activists. So perhaps maybe YB Tony Phua can send a message to your colleague, mention to him that I think that the involvement of the youth and also the students inside the evolution of our coup is very important. We're saying that we want to engage the youth in the nation building, and the university is the platform before we are going to the society. But how come the students' voices are not being heard? So this is the things that I'm going to mention. This is a statement now, okay? So the second thing is, I would like to ask is like student activism, or is always like what Dato Ambiga said just now, being demonized, like being demonized like by everyone, like especially some particular group. They were saying that those people are just trying to know how to protest. They are radical. They don't know. They just voice out their opinion, but they don't know how to solve the problem. But this is the things that have been labeled. But actually, I'm pretty sure that a lot of activism, they have the solution. They have the things, they have the agenda, the reformation agenda, but they are being demonized. So how could we overcome this issue? Maybe Dato Ambiga can give some inspiration for us to get. I think it's quite important because we need to send out the message and we need to send out our ideology to others. So how are we going to reach overcome this issue? Then the second question would be, currently, we know that there is a change inside the government. However, we know the administration system remain. It is still the same. So how are we going to overcome this issue? Because it seems like even though the head or even though the minister, they have the political views, but how they are going to tackle with this current system? And in fact, the public service system, or they are quite a major group inside Malaysia, and I'm pretty sure they are quite afraid when they are trying to cut down So how are you going to overcome with the current administration system? Because it still remains a lot of old way thinking, I would say. Okay. And the last question it would be, we are trying. I'm pretty support for the statement or even the decision made by the cabinet saying that to lowering the voting age to 18. It's a very progressive way and it's a very progressive move. So, but the problem right now we are facing is the netizen or even the citizens. You can see a lot of comments, Facebook comments. They are judging whether the 18 years old students or 18 years old boys or girls, they have the ability to judge or not. So how are we going to overcome with this kind of people, trying to educate with them? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll take a few more questions. Please, the one in front. Yeah.
Okay, hello. I'm Simpson Tan, and I'm currently studying UM as well. All right, my questions are actually relatable to both of their questions. Okay, like Mazna actually mentioned that we actually need a platform or a tool. But the thing is, we have no idea what are the platforms. So what are the platforms available? What are the tools available? And do they even care about what we say, actually? That's one. And also, since we have no idea what are these platforms, there are actually more and more NGOs, more and more organizations coming up. Doesn't that actually portray that it's a failure of the government itself, or a failure of the system, so that people are actually forming this kind of NGOs to tackle these kind of problems? So yeah, what are these, what are the platforms? I would like to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I take one more? This girl in front. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Phoenix. I was born and raised in what is currently YB Tony Phua's constituency. Growing up my whole life in Malaysia, I can attest to the fact that young people are socialized to view politics as taboo. So with a group of some really amazing first-time voters, we are establishing Youth Citizen Diplomats Malaysia. We are a grassroots, non-partisan NGO, and what we aim to do is to amplify the voices of Malaysian youth. And we are also dedicated to non-partisan civic and political education. So my question is, for the entire panel, how do we ensure that young Malaysians, particularly those from marginalized communities, are truly engaged in this conversation, because they are often left out? And my second question is, how do we ensure that political and civic education is non-partisan? Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of questions there. I have to stop the questions for now, so that at least to give the panelists a chance to answer some of the questions. I don't think we can answer all of them. Some of the questions are quite related. So by all means, who would like to answer the questions or some of the questions? Who will go first?
Maybe I answer.
Fadiah, okay.
Yeah, the question about how do we amplify marginalized voices. Yeah, exclusion is a reality. We always talk about, for example, the LGBT people, we talk about the poor, we talk about the stateless, we talk about refugees, migrants, but we have never heard from them. You know, we don't listen when they have something to say. So what I would suggest is we have to start talking to them, because they are also organizing themselves, trying to get their voices heard. The problem is there are not many platforms out there who are willing to give them the space for them to speak about their predicament, about the suffering that they have to endure. So what we need to do is really listen. I think that's very important. And also, there are a lot of groups that do works with marginalized groups, so we can always talk to these groups and try to understand, you know, what they have to say about issues that face them. So yeah, it's as simple as listening. I think this is a skill that we have lost over the years. You know, we don't listen anymore, because if you go to social media, everyone wants to say something. Sorry. Okay, everyone wants to say something, but no one wants to listen. Because if we don't listen, we will never understand what it means to be marginalized, what it means to be oppressed, what it means to be part of minority groups. So let them speak for themselves. We just have to amplify their voices. We don't speak for them. We don't speak over them. Let them speak. Then we can have a conversation that is meaningful.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Maybe I follow up from that, Fadiah, which this way. I think where the marginalized community are concerned, when we marginalize anyone, it is due to our lack of education, yes. And our lack of knowledge, and we visit that ignorance upon the marginalized community. I know, for example, the LGBT community, every time people come out and hassle them, and don't forget, they are very easy punching bags. Huh? Yes. Everybody wants to beat up on them. You actually put their lives in danger. And that's why our politicians and our leaders, etc., really should be careful what they say. So for me, actually, then part of that education is perhaps not just the education of the youth, but education of the older people who are very uneducated about marginalized communities. Maybe that's also another approach, okay? Yep. Now, I just want to answer that specific question of the young man who asked about what do you do, how do you overcome opposition, and how do you overcome criticisms from people. Now, criticisms are par for the course. Whenever you stand up and you fight for something, you will be criticized. But you have to have the courage to overcome any fear. I mean, I'm not saying don't be frightened. Huh? People do get scared. Overcome it and keep bashing at it. Now look, Bersih was started. I didn't start Bersih. It was actually others in the politicians and NGOs who started it in 2007. It has taken 11 years, okay, to bring any kind of change in this country. Bersih is only one of the organizations. So you need to go the distance. That's the other thing. You need to have stamina, and you have to keep fighting. If you are clear in your mind that your cause is worthwhile, you keep fighting. That's my advice to you.
Thank you, Ambiga. Anybody else?
I can.
Okay, fine. Tony, take a shot.
There's a lot of questions actually surrounding the 18-year-old thing. How do you increase political consciousness and stuff like that. I'll just like to say one more not so popular thing to say. While a chunk of the blame is on our system, whether it's political system, education system. But a big chunk of the blame is actually on our parents. They would tell you politics is dirty. Don't touch politics. Stay away from politics. Just study, get your A's, get a job, migrate, and forget about all this nonsense.
Make a lot of money.
Let me give two small examples of my own little bit of political awakening. 10, 11 years old, I live in a kampong off Batu Pahat. Takes about 15 kilometers to town to school every day with my father. This is a kampong road. And one day I saw council workers cutting down trees. And I asked my father, these trees were just planted 6 months ago. Why are they cutting it down so soon? You know? And the response was, well, if you don't cut down trees, they don't cut down trees, they can't award new contracts. Very early education. And I mean, it's an example, it's not probably the only thing we talked about, but it was an example that really stuck to the head about the system, the policies that was taking place. And the second example that struck me and stayed with me, had a very deep impression on especially which party I joined when I grew up, was the who would remember the co-op crisis in the 80s, where my dad's family had a lot of money deposited in many of these co-ops, paying interest rates of 8%, 9%, 10%, and the entire funds were basically frozen, and you only got your principal back over the next 10 years and stuff. And you hear about this being controlled by MCA, the powers they be, the corrupt and stuff. And I think these are little stories that are real in the family that you see around you that helps inculcate awareness among the children. I don't think parents should be worried that every children that is taught politics will join politics. No. Although there's nothing wrong with that. No, politics is only as dirty as the politicians that join. So if you are clean, then politics is clean. It's not politics itself being dirty, but awareness is important. Even if you become an engineer, become a doctor, become a lawyer, awareness is important as a whole to ensure that the right government get voted into place.
Thank you, Tony. Masni?
Well, I just want to talk about the platform just now. I think if there's no platform, we should create one lah, YB. Or maybe, maybe we can have, you know, recently I saw this Adun, I can't remember which one. He was having this town hall meeting every month. So maybe we can, while waiting for the education to be revamped and such, maybe we can have a town hall meeting at a local level, or what was that, the era level, you know, maybe something like that. I don't know.
I just want to add to that, to another question that was raised with regards to all these NGOs popping up. Is this a failure of the government? Two answers to that. One, it is not a failure of government in the sense that the government is never going to be perfect. There's no government that is going to be perfect, whether it's a modern developed economy or a backwaters somewhere else. The fact that NGOs are sprouting out, to me, is a success because it means greater awareness, greater participation among the citizens of the public, and greater space for these NGOs to pop up so that the government can be kept in check. There's not going to be a perfect government because you are not going to get the most smartest or most politically correct or ministers out there. So it's good that you have more NGOs. It also demonstrates more political space, and take all this in your own hands. Don't depend on someone else setting up a platform for you. Create the platform for yourself. Yeah. Like I'm saying, no, there was someone else who asked about the NGOs. So setting up these NGOs is a good thing. Some NGOs will falter off, some NGOs will rise to prominence, and that's where how much you can make a difference in society comes into the picture.
Thank you, Tony. Wow, time flies.
Yes,
we'll
we're
have
almost...
one last round of questions.
Yeah, actually, we have a corporate organization in the hall who's very supportive in engaging the youth in nation building. We'd like to listen and see if Mr. Lee Kim Yew, the founder of Country Heights, would you have something to share with us?
All right, Tan Sri. Yeah, I know, I saw that.
Thank you. I'm 63 years old, no more youth.
I'm 26, according to Ambiga, I'm not youth anymore, so.
Thank you. Actually, I have a question to ask the panelists. But before that, maybe I just give some comments about, I think, all the panelists and people are all in this hall, as a Malaysian, what we have gone through before GE14. I always say that before GE14, especially from 2015 until the May, 9th of May, Malaysia had gone through one of the darkest period of the, what do you call, the nation, everybody nation. And I think that the darkest period, if I can put it, what went wrong? Actually, it's a moral and ethic went wrong. And that created a lot of injustice. But we are very lucky, we have people like the panelists on the stage, which I said the other day, I was in Penang just about a few weeks ago, and I saw a quotation. I like to give this quotation to compliment everyone in this hall. That quotation, you can remember, he said like this. He said, human integrity is an uncompromised courage. And it depends on an individual who take the initiative or we work with others that in accordance to the justice, in accordance to the truth, but nothing but truth. I think because of our democracy system is working, but we must regard our democracy in Malaysia, we actually is monarch democracy. And our constitution and the Rukun Negara is very important. And I found a lot of this GE14 because our constitution, the power of the constitution, and the, what we call the, our Rukun Negara still intact. For example, Rukun Negara is said kesusilaan and kesopanan, the moral and ethic part. And if the politician or the citizen really take moral and ethic, and I think that is a very important document or key after the May 13, those days, the old those old school politicians, they really know how to take shame and they put all this in place for us. So I think the youth, I like to encourage the youth that not only must learn the Rukun Negara and see whether it's possible that with a new government, maybe you look at Indonesia, such a big country. I think today they are what they call Pancasila, are working for the country. And coming back to our constitution, I must thanks openly take this forum to thanks I call Amma Ambiga. Ambiga actually I call her Amma. I think she really represents in Malaysia when it comes to injustice, and her courage, her uncompromised courage is always our example. We must give her a big round of applause. So I call Ambiga because come to Constitution, you look at the Constitution Article number 3 that says this Constitution is a supreme law. Any law change after the independence to the inconsistent to our current Constitution is to be void. So, but we let Parliament pass through a lot of things that actually to the inconsistent. So I think for the youth to really go forward, my advice is try to take Rukun Negara and the, what we call the, our constitution, learn by heart. And say, for example, recently there's a lot of talk about why Najib is not putting the, what we call orange shirts, other people are cuffed. But I'm not saying Najib must be follow others. Others will be follow Najib. Because in the Constitution that everyone is to the equal protection of the law, not to the equal punishment of the law. But unfortunately, we found the previous government do a law not to protect, but to punish your own citizens, but we reward the foreigners. So this is something that we have to educate, engage you for this. Now coming to the panelists, I have a question for my, I'm also from Batu Pahat. So I am very keen to ask Tony a question, maybe with this question to encourage you to publish a book for the youth. It's about politics, you know. I don't want to be in, I get involved in politics. But in politics, in Mandarin, it's called 政治. But when it comes to the English word, it's called politics. I did ask my daughter to say, he said, politics, the Western politics means something is like a fly, an insect that sucks your blood. But in the Chinese Confucian politics, it's called 政治. You have to be very straight, keep to the moral and rule the politics. So I'd like to ask Mr. Tony Phua, young Brahimat, also young Brahumat, what is your final meaning of politics? If you can share with the youth. That's my question to you. And to the panelists, I also said we talk so much about education. Yeah, we talk about age 13, 17. I think that our primary school, secondary school, and university, yes, I agree, it's very political now. And politicians really, education should really leave it to educationalists. Because I believe, I support Mr. Tony Phua said, parents. Actually, our education is, the parent always want our children to be educated as a particular human being, not as a human being. You know. By right, education should educate our children to be a human being. In our constitution, as we run the Wake Up Malaysia, the times have come. I did quote, in the constitution, actually anybody who wants to be Malaysian citizen should be a good characters. You know. So actually those people are not good character, we should cut off their citizenship. So we solve a lot of problems. But what I'm trying to say, the opportunity of will the new government really consider to take from the pre-education, which children before 7, they don't know about what is different races, what is different, religious. And that's a way to build their, to build, that may be a good start for us to look at how to integrate, really concentrate on the pre-education. Children before 7, you ask him to go back to the children, to the house, to do anything for the parents, they would actually very easy to follow. But of course, when they come to the youth, 15, they become rebellion. So maybe that is a new area. While we talk about engage a youth in the nation building, we should go even further before pre-education. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tan Sri. Now, we are running out of time, but I'm going to be very democratic. We're asking for an extension of time from the organizers. I have, quite a number of people waiting to ask questions, so I'm going to be the last round of questions. For those who are standing up, you get to ask your question, and then we'll see how we're going to answer them. Okay, fine. We'll start from over there. And please try to keep it short and
Can we have
concise.
the mic on for her, please?
Do we have a mic? Yeah. Is that working?
Yeah, there we go.
Nama saya Siti Nur Izzah
Your
binti
name
Mat
and where you're from.
daripada UIAM. Soalan pertama adalah, saya percaya menjadi anak muda dan mahasiswa itu perlu independen dan berideologi. Kerana untuk anak muda, untuk kita bergerak ke depan, kita harus ada ideologi dan cita-cita. Sebab tanpa dua benda ni, kita melahirkan anak muda yang berpendirian goyah dan mudah tersasar. Jadi soalan kepada panelis adalah, apa ideologi, cita-cita dan tools yang kita perlu gunakan untuk memastikan bahawa anak muda yang lahir hari ini dan di depan adalah anak muda yang independen, anak muda yang ada pendirian dan berprinsip dalam jalan yang dipilih oleh diri dia sendiri. Dan mungkin ada satu komen, ketika tentang sit-in yang berlaku. Sebab saya adalah salah seorang yang ditangkap di KPM. Komen saya adalah, bila kita bercakap tentang space, kita bersetuju dengan prinsip we have to give space to the youth. Tapi ada lagi benda-benda kecil tentang space yang kita tak dapat adalah di media. Sebab hari ini ada banyak media yang datang. Jadi yang selalu diambil adalah naratif-naratif yang kita ini begini, kita ini begini. Tapi naratif yang bila kita nak bercakap tentang kenapa kita buat macam ni, kenapa kita marah, tidak diambil oleh media. Dan itu satu benda yang perlu kita ubahlah. Dia bukan sebab kita cakap tentang pembangunan negara, kita bukan bercakap tentang pembangunan ahli politik dan sebagainya. Kita bercakap tentang kita semua. Jadi kalau kita nak lakukan perubahan, itu adalah datang dari hasil tanggungjawab kita semua. Dan persoalan terakhir adalah yang perlu kita jawab, sebenarnya bila kita nak membangunkan negara, betul-betul tak kita sebenarnya nak dengar suara anak muda? Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Okay, next one.
Hello, my name is Shazwani and I'm from IIUM also. I just finished my studies and I'm also one of the protester yang dekat KPM hari tu. Okay, before I want to start, briefly I want to add what Yang Ki said earlier. Actually, the protesting and comment what Tony Pua just said, what is the best approach. And actually, the protesting is it's very good. Got us the goods because after months of no response from Mazli, our protest caused his department to immediately offer a meeting to us through the media. Then he invited us. So we will not have the meeting if we did not protest. And okay, so yeah. And my question is, we've been talking about what means to engage the youth in a meaningful way. And my feeling is that we have to take that point seriously. For example, if we get the formal right to vote, but then Pakatan abolish AUKU, but then Pakatan takes the full 5-year term to abolish AUKU, and we can't talk about politics on campus, then the right to vote is meaningless. What does the panel think needs to happen in order for not just the formal right to vote, but the democratic culture to be accessible to the youth again? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Next one, I'll finish everybody. Just wait for a while.
Before I start, I must say it's been a quite interesting experience. I've never quite been in a forum where a sponsor has been able to purchase priority in the queue to ask a question. Anyway, on to the actual question. We've been talking a lot about what it means to meaningfully engage youth in nation building. We've been talking about lowering the voting age. I speak from experience studying in Australia. I've watched 15, 16, 17-year-olds organize against the detention regime in Australia, the detention of refugees in Australia. And of course, we're close to the example of Hong Kong, where Joshua Wu organized school students and university students against the Chinese so-called Communist Party, one of the most powerful regimes on the planet, to defend democratic rights. I have absolutely no doubt in the ability of youth to engage in politics productively. But I think the question is one of, let's ask a more interesting question, right? Later this evening, Syed Sadiq is going to walk in here and he's going to tell us triumphantly that his cabinet has agreed to lower the voting age to 18. Love me. But we don't have the 2/3 majority yet in Parliament. What happens if it fails? I want to ask the panel what each one of them is willing to do if the vote fails. What are we going to do to get the voting age lower? What are you prepared to do? And us in Malaysia Muda, the group we're from, we know what we're prepared to do. I expect Fadiah will give us, give our collective group's answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll start, we'll continue on. Yeah, lady in front.
Hello. Hi everyone, my name is Suba. I'm a medical doctor. I trained in UK. I was sponsored by JPA, so thank you to the government for that. Now, I have two issues that I want to raise today. The first of all is a lot of government-funded and privately funded scholars who end up abroad do not want to come back. And there's also a general sense of apathy towards the local political climate. They are far more involved with what Trump has to say than to what Tunham has to say. So with the results of the recent election, do you think that might change? And also, how can we get all our local graduates who are overseas be more involved in the country's issues even when they are abroad? So that's number one. And number two, I was doing my housemanship in Sabah, in Kota Kinabalu, and I found, during my time there, I found that there's this massive chasm in the political climate in Sabah as opposed to federal government. And there's also a general distrust amongst people there where they feel like they're not being heard by the government. And I don't blame them. Like, for the entirety of Sabah and parts of Sarawak, Kota Kinabalu is the only tertiary hospital. And believe it or not, 2/3 of all reported TB cases that we end up treating comes from Sabah. How does that happen? I have no idea. And that is also probably because there are many Sabahans, even third-generation Sabahans, who still don't have birth certificates and ICs. So that means they can't even enroll in government schools or even get basic healthcare from government hospitals for free. And they can't afford to foot the bill, even if you ask them to. So with the current government, do you think we will be, in some sense or other, bridge the gap between Peninsula and Sabah and Sarawak? So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good question. Can I have, people at the back?
Hi.
Yes,
hello.
Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, just one question. My name's Evan. I'm from Brickfields Asia College. So I think we can all agree that the freedom of speech is very important. But hearing about the recent federal court decision that it has now allowed the government to sue individuals for defamation, do the panelists think that this is a serious concern for the youth today? And if so, what can the youth do to address this issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Elvin. Last one. Please go ahead.
Very good morning to all the honorable guests. I'm Leo from University Tunku Abdul Rahman. So as we know, Malaysia is a very nice country built up of people that with different race and religious. But however, there's always two sides on the coin. And we can see after the forming of Pakatan Harapan government, we can see many events that brought many arguments, like our finance minister said he is not a Chinese, he is a Malaysian, which is a fact, but also scored by many people. And also the appointment of a non-Muslim as our Attorney General. So maybe as a politician, maybe we can say that as we know, since we are using simple majority in our election, so maybe you can say that we just need to take care of the majority, or we just play around the racial issue to govern this country. So I was keen to ask that, can we or how can we get rid of this race-based politics? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, there are a lot of questions. I don't think we can answer all that, but what I'm going to do is that I'll just have one last round among the panelists. Who want to start first? Whatever questions that you want to answer, by all means. Okay, Fadiah.
Can we have her mic on, please?
Hi. Okay. All right. Questions from my fellow friends from Malaysia Muda. I think, what do you need, to stand up for the right thing? I think the hardest thing today to do is basically to humanize the marginalized, the oppressed among us. When we try to do that, we get demonized. When we say that we want to stop violence against minorities, we will get demonized for that. So if we stand for humanism, if we believe that humanity will save us all, we have to hold on to that and never let go of it. We can never compromise when it comes to humanizing people. Because if you read Hannah Arendt, The Banality of Evil, she actually talks about how society normalizes violence, normalizes evil, that we start to demonize people who want to give meaning to dignity. So what we need to do to start talking about greater good instead of lesser evilism. So we have to change our narrative. We have to start talking about humanity and really believe in it. When we say that we don't want a politics that is divisive, we have to say it clearly. We don't want race-based politics that is divisive, we have to say it clearly. We don't want people to go around saying, you have to respect the majority. What kind of country are we going to become if we allow this kind of violence to continue? What does it mean when people say that you have to respect the majority? That means we are legitimizing violence, hatred against people who don't have as much power as we have as the majority. So we have to start thinking about all these ideals. When we talk about freedom, what does it mean? When we talk about democracy, what does it mean? When we talk about humanity, what does it mean? So we have to stand true to that, and we have to hold on to that, so that we won't compromise, so that we won't dehumanize anyone, you know, in our midst. Yeah.
Thank you, Fadiah.
Tan Sri asked me about what is politics. I'm not in a position to tell you what is so-called real meaning of politics, but politics to me is a means to bring good to the people through governance. The way societies, the way countries are ruled is through a government, and politics is to be able to influence policy, make changes such that the good policies gets implemented in the country. So that's my view of politics, dan ia berkaitan dengan soalan yang ditanya sebentar tadi tentang ideologi yang patut dipercaya, diambil oleh anak muda Malaysia sekarang. Saya percaya ideologi ini jangan terlalu terpikat dengan ideologi seperti ideologi leftist, rightist, all those sort of ideologies. For me, ideologi yang patut diambil oleh anak muda kita ialah berlaku baik kepada orang lain, berlaku baik kepada masyarakat, dan sama ada berlaku baik ni bermaksud mengambil bahagian dalam politik jika ada minat, ataupun menjadi seorang guru, ataupun menjadi seorang filantropis, ataupun menjadi seorang peguam. As long as you hold on to that ideology, I'm sure you would do well for the country.
Thank you, Tony.
Just on, to pick up from Fadiah a little bit, I think there's a saying to the effect that how civilized a society we are is judged by how we treat our most marginalized and vulnerable. That's the test, not how you treat your majority, okay? And I think we need to stop treating leaders, people at the top, like gods, or idols who cannot be criticized. Everybody, we're all human, so are they. They need to learn to take criticism, and we need to learn how to give criticism as well. So, and never be afraid to do that. Now, on the multiracial issue, I actually think things are already changing. Because don't forget, that was the rhetoric of the past. You don't hear that rhetoric so much now. And when people try to actually talk about race and have gatherings, not much support. You know why? Because they're not in power anymore. So the people in power are the ones who are going to set the standard. And so far, you haven't heard any racist comments by the government of the day. And that's how it's going to be for the next 5 years. And you will find, well, that's how it better be for the next 5 years. I have confidence it will be, because that is something that we're very clear about. So it will change, I think. If it doesn't change, then we need to do something about it. But we must start by not supporting these people who speak like that. Because when they don't have support, it'll end, I'm telling you, okay? So that's one of the things I want to say. And just the last couple of things. Now, the thing about Sabah and Sarawak by Dr. Subra, I think that is on the cards already, actually, to be fair. I can see that there is a real effort to bridge that gap. There is indeed a gap. There's a real effort to bridge that gap. I was very pleased to see the Sabah Chief Minister lift the ban on many activists. One of the first things he did, including myself and Tony, right? So we can actually go there. Sarawak hasn't done anything yet, though. Huh? Sarawak hasn't taken the same step. So anyway, that's something we'll have to wait and see. But I actually think, in relation to the two-thirds majority, that you spoke about earlier. Can we get 2/3 majority on the 18-year-olds? I actually think we can, because I would like to see the opposition say no to our youth. I would really like to see them do that. Because let me tell you, that would be really stupid. Because you're alienating all the youth from 18 years and above. So I personally think this is one thing you can actually probably get your 2/3 majority. And I think we must hold the opposition also to account, whoever to account, if they do not make sure this amendment goes through. But yes, it does need 2/3 majority. Now, the other thing is, and finally, I would say that we heard from two of the protesters, and I was delighted to hear from them actually. They're very clear in their minds what they want, and I think you are all clear in your minds what you want. I remember saying not too long ago that I felt, this was a few years ago, when all this oppression was going on, the toxicity that we were feeling in the air, I remember saying, I believe my generation failed the youth because we didn't fight oppression hard enough. It had gone on for so many years and people didn't speak up. And they didn't speak up because the economy was good, people were comfortable. No one saw the dangers of the undermining of our institutions. So I felt we had failed the youth. However, after May the 9th, I feel our work is done and it's now over to the youth. We are all tired a little bit, you know. Over to the youth. It's now up to you. This is your future. And you've got a brilliant future, a very bright future. And I hope to see you all completely engaged in the next 5 years. We hope this government will carry on. Well, it depends on what they do, of course, in the next 5 years. But we hope this trend of democracy carries on. We have now, the people have handed to you a democratic nation because we changed the government after 61 years. We have handed to the youth of today a democracy. Now it is for you to take care of it, for you to nurture it, and for you to make sure it continues as a thriving democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambiga. Masli?
Oh, that's a nice ending.
Okay, fine. I know that we didn't manage to answer all the questions, but don't worry. This is the very first event that Malaysiakini has organized. There will be more. So we will continue this conversation because really you're not going to be able to solve everything in one day. So it's a good thing that you have this the engagement and all the attention. The fact that you stay for 2 hours to listen to this is just amazing. And definitely there will be there are other programs later this afternoon. You will have ministers actually coming here to listen to you. So by all means, speak up. That's the platform that we want to give you. And later tonight, you have the great debate. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambiga. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Fadiah. And thank you, Mazna.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephen Gan, for moderating the session this morning. Now, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to invite Stephen Gan to present a token of appreciation to all the panelists on stage. First of all, I'd like to invite YB Tony Phua. Sorry, I got the constituency size wrong. Next up, we have Dato Ambiga Srinivasan. Are you sure that youth ends at 25? Fadiah Nadwa Filkri. And last but not least, Mazni Ibrahim. Thank you very much. It has been an honor to have you join us today. To all the panelists and to all of you today, you've got a big day ahead of you. Because this morning we had the talk about policy, but in the afternoon, we will be having the policy talk where we will listen to the youth. We'll have youth speakers on stage and we will have questions from the floor as well. The first topic, well, if you feel the air conditioning is too cold, the first topic is towards a greener and cleaner Malaysia. So if you want our MPs to pass a law that provides that we shouldn't set the aircon to 14 Celsius, this is your chance. As a person who was politically knowledgeable from a young age, I am the son of a former ISA detainee during Operation Lalang. It has been a very, rough road for life in Malaysia because I've seen a lot of things that have happened and my parents kept me very informed. As the youth, we have a big responsibility on our hands because my friends have asked me, Daniel, why do you stoop so low? Why do you stoop so low to get involved in politics? Be above politics. Be better than politics. I stood firm and I said that, the politics are part of the future of the country, and that's why I stayed to get involved, and I'm glad all of you here have chosen to get involved as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, all of you heading out, one last thing, please be back here 1:30 p.m. sharp. That's 1:30 p.m. sharp for the next session. We will have YB Isnarasya Munira Majlis, Deputy Minister of Energy, Science, Technology, Environment and Climate Change, who will be with that session, ladies and gentlemen. If you would like to tell your friends to watch anywhere in the world, our program is broadcast live on the Malaysiakini Facebook page, Kini TV Facebook page, Malay Mail Facebook page, City Plus Facebook page, Vokat Facebook page, and the Sina Harian Facebook page. The debate tonight will be telecast live on Astro Awani Channel 501. Again, that's Astro Awani Channel 501. Right now, if you are hungry and you want to get a bite to eat, there are food trucks in the parking lot once again, and there are also washrooms outside the hall again as you exit, to the left for the gents, to the right for the ladies. Once again, we'd like to talk a bit about our sponsors. IOI Commercial, one of the top 3 largest property development companies in Malaysia that hires a young workforce, where 40% of the company is under the age of 30 and 70% under the age of 40. We also have Boost, the e-wallet app. You can use this to pay at some of the food trucks and also at certain Pasar Malams, Pasar Pagis and various other shops including KK Mart. You'll find them outside to the right. And of course, as today, a very special day for all the youth here, flash your student ID at the Malaysiakini booth, and if you register for a year of Malaysiakini, we will throw in another year completely free. 1 day only, ladies and gentlemen, 1 day only. Thank you very much for attending. I'm Daniel Anthony from Kini TV signing off for this morning. Peace out.
I'm Lee Kim Yew. I am Malaysian. We should all treasure the independence we got from the British and the new independence we get from the kleptocracy government. And all Malaysians now must not count on what kind of background, either you're Malay, Chinese, Indian, or what is your background of religious. And we have to treat ourselves all as Malaysian. And the most important is the rich must help the poor. If everybody also be loving our country, everybody become a patriotic, Malaysia will be a most beautiful country to live in this world.
And we are Malaysians. Our hopes and dreams for new Malaysia is a better unity. Respect each other, live in